Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Tales of Herding God Part 69 based on novel. So let's start. Qin Mu tidied up the herbs and matched them up. He nourished Old Ma's arm and Cripple's leg with medicine, before buying some venomous insect powder of the south from the warehouse of the Imperial College. This insect powder was made of incomparably tiny insects, called vermilion beauty venomous insects. If a single insect was placed in front of a person, it was impossible to see with a naked eye, only with the third eye. After the insects were dried and turned into powder, they would revive when in contact with blood. Qin Mu asked for some fresh blood from Old Ma and Cripple and used it to dissolve the insect powder. When vermilion beauty venomous insects received the nourishment of fresh blood, they revived and made it seem as if the two goblets of fresh blood were alive. Old Ma and Cripple looked at the goblets. Their eyesight was extraordinary, and could naturally see the insects in the blood. There were tens of thousands of them densely packed in the goblet, and the sight of it was terrifying. Cripple smiled. Mua, you plan to use these insects to cure our limbs. What insects are these? Are they harmful or not? Among the people in the village, Butcher could only claim to be number 2 when ranked on fiendishness that could make little maidens cry. The number 1 was Apothecary, who loved to raise flowers and little insects. Apothecary's face was scary, but his insects were scarier. Cripple was used to stealing stuff, and everyone's room had been visited by him. Even Qin Mu's sugar-coated hawthorns were scammed away by him a few times, but he had never touched Apothecary's room. Qin Mu followed Apothecary to learn the art of healing, so he was quite knowledgeable about insects. Looking at the insects in the two goblets, Cripple couldn't help feeling his hair stand on end. He kept having the feeling that a wicked person was trying to harm him. Grandpa Cripple, don't worry. The use of vermilion beauty venomous insects is one of the venomous insect techniques from 5 sprouts of the southern borders. There's no harm to the body. Qin Mu injected the insect blood into the blood vessels of Old Ma's arm and Cripple's leg, and the vermilion beauty venomous insects were now planted into the limbs. He then said, the reason why these insects are called vermilion beauty venomous insects is because there are some women from the sects of the southern borders who use them to freeze their beauty and preserve their youth. They even continue to look alive after they are dead. Looking alive after dying, Cripple gave a shudder, still feeling that these vermilion beauty venomous insects weren't anything good. Qin Mu placed Cripple's leg and Old Ma's arm into the medicinal cauldron. There was already a cauldron of medicinal decoction there, and he said, this kind of venomous insect can eat away the dead blood in the blood, the dead skin on the skin, the mucous membrane when muscles are damaged, broken bones, and dead bone marrow. That's why people who use vermilion beauty venomous insects are able to preserve the appearance of their youth until they die of old age. Grandpa Apothecary said he had a few intimate friends of the fairer sex who raised this kind of venomous insect in their body. Even years later, they still looked 16 to 17 years old and were very tight. Grandpa Apothecary said he likes girls who are very tight. The youth revealed a thoughtful expression. What does girls who are very tight mean? Cripple said, you're still young, don't think about these nonsensical things. Can I use them? Qin Mu found a seed from the spirit herbs taken from the palace, and lifted up a floor tile in the main room, revealing jade-like soil underneath, of course. However, there's a disadvantage to this kind of venomous insect. If they get hungry, they start eating the healthy flesh and blood, so people who have these venomous insects need to use fresh blood to raise them. As time goes by, there will be more and more vermilion beauty venomous insects in their body, so the fresh blood they have to consume will grow in quantity. He opened his Taotier's sack and took out some water from Jade Dragon Palace to water it. Grandpa Apothecary said that in the land of 5 sprouts, it is a frequent occurrence that beautiful women seduce young and strong men. After a night of fun, only the skin of the men would be left, their owners having turned into dissolute ghosts. The essence and blood sucked away from their bodies would have been used by the women to feed their vermilion beauty venomous insects. Cripple shuddered. After Qin Mu watered the soil, it bulged out and a soft shoot popped out, growing taller and taller at a speed visible to the naked eye. The youth executed Overlord Body 3 elixir technique, as he continued walking around the tiny sapling in the main room. He then executed Earth Eon creation technique, and struck the tiny sapling with madras. The moment his palm and his 5 moving fingers touched the leaf of the sapling, they would immediately get deflected. When the branches and leaves came into contact with his palm or fingers, there were actually ding and dong sounds which were like notes of a guqin. A melodious rhythm rang out in the main room. Qin Mu stepped about, and with his Earth Eon creation technique, the small tree grew to the height of a human and began to sprout, revealing lush green leaves. Next, flower buds grew out and bloomed into snow-white pear blossoms. The reputation of vermilion beauty venomous insect isn't good, so when I went to the warehouse of Imperial College to buy it earlier, the directorate even asked what I wanted to use it for. That directorate said that there are many females in the kings, dukes, and ministers' families that like these kinds of things. There are also some consorts in the palace that like them, so Hall of Supreme Healing had altered these venomous insects, so that they couldn't reproduce. Qin Mu's footsteps didn't stop, and neither did his hands. The mudra continued to change like Guanine flicking her fingers. Each flick produced a thump sound of a stone landing into a calm lake. The pear blossoms on the tree withered as green pears grew out. Those pears were small and exquisite, only the size of a thumb. However, under the transformation of Qin Mu's mudra, the fruits slowly grew bigger. Imperial Physician, you even created an insect elimination pill so when the vermilion beauty venomous insects start to harm the body, one can consume this pill to kill the vermilion beauty venomous insects and remove them from their body. Qin Mu transformed his creation technique, continuing to ripen the fruits, and the green pears on the tree became as big as a fist. I had the directorate of the warehouse fetch an insect elimination pill for me to have a look. The herbs used in it are only ordinary herbs, yet they are sold for an exorbitant price. Even Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's month's salary isn't enough to buy one of them. That directorate said that Imperial Physician, you had relied on this pill to become a tycoon among the Imperial Physicians. Cripple's eyes lighted up. Imperial Physician you. Tycoon. The pears on the tree turned yellow and gave off a fragrant fruity smell. Qin Mu plucked a few and threw them to Old Ma and Cripple. The 2 old men took a bite and the sweetness of the pear spread throughout their mouth, making them exclaim in admiration. What kind of spell did little divine physician use to transform these pears? Old Ma asked. Qin Mu blushed and said, Grandpa Ma, stop making fun of me. This is the Earth Eon creation technique that Granny taught me. Earth Eon creation technique. Old Ma and Cripple looked at each other in dismay, and Cripple muttered, I saw Granny Sai execute this move to refine the sun before. At the time of noon, the 5 hearts faced upwards to gather the essence of the sun, causing the fire clouds in the sky to come surging over. The sight was so terrifying that it was obvious at first glance that it was a top-notch technique of the devil path. Granny Sai used this technique to scorch many people to death, which is very unlike how you used it just now. Qin Mu was stunned. Could I have cultivated it wrongly? Old Ma disagreed. You didn't cultivate it wrongly. You had cultivated it purely, while I reckon Old Woman Sai was the one that had strayed from the path. The sun nourishes all living things, so by right it should be used this way. Qin Mu plucked a few more pears and sliced them into half, before placing them in the medicine decoction. I use vermilion beauty venomous insects to get rid of the dead parts in the arm and leg, and after they are gotten rid of, I will use medicine to force the vermilion beauty venomous insects out. The insects won't harm your limbs. This yellow pear is a herb to excite the medicinal energy of other herbs. It's also pretty delicious, but there are little medicinal properties in it. His knowledge in the art of healing even surpassed that of Imperial Physician Yu. This physician had used insect elimination pill to poison vermilion beauty venomous insects, so after they died, they would still remain within the body to be slowly discharged. Chinmu, however, had used medicine to force these venomous insects to swim out by themselves, not leaving a trace behind. Furthermore, the medicinal decoction he had refined could help improve blood circulation, exciting the activity of Old Ma's arm and Cripple's arm, which would help with the recovery of its life force. When the limbs were nursed back to health, he could reattach them back. Qin Mu plucked the other pears and filled up a basket full of them. He then pulled out the pear tree with its roots and moved it to the courtyard. Qin Mu called Hu Linga and the dragon Qilin over, giving some pears to them as well. Hu Linga tasted a mouthful and exclaimed endlessly. The dragon Qilin also ate quite a few of them. Even if these weren't scarlet fire spirit pills, it still ate heartily. It's time for this fellow to lose some fat. Qin Mu stared at this dragon Qilin and thought to himself, if he continues eating like this, I doubt he will be able to fly up while stepping on fire clouds. Cripple couldn't sit still. After staying half a day at Qin Mu's place, he started grumbling about going out for a walk. Old Ma was worried he might meet Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, so he went out with him. The person that Cripple always obeyed was Old Ma. He was respectful and afraid of him, so he could not reject him. Even if the two had run out, Qin Mu wasn't worried about their safety. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was also heavily injured, so if he met Cripple might not be the one at a disadvantage. Furthermore, Old Ma was the most steady person in the village. With Old Ma around, Cripple wouldn't fool around. A few days passed by, and the Imperial scholars that had gone to the front lines returned. In Lizhu, Surging River, and Deer County, they had met with Great Mountain Sect summoning a devil, 9 Spectre Sect summoning souls, and Corpse Immortal Cult controlling corpses. After they received the surprise attack of General Xiaoyi, 30% of the Imperial scholars that had headed to the battle were killed. These 30% were the elites of the elites, so they could be said to have suffered a great loss. The Imperial scholars, who had gone forth into the darkness, had been completely wiped out. Luckily, the main forces of Eternal Peace Empire's army had managed to quell the rebellion in Surging River under the command of Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. General Yuyuan Chuyun had also managed to gather the power of everyone to slay the devil god that was summoned forth and made his way to the gate of the netherworld. Lizhu Prefecture Magistrate Yuyuan Chuyu had led her army across the river to stop General Xiaoyi, and only when both sides of the army launched a bloody battle on the surface of the river that the power of General Xiaoyi's army finally came to a halt. The swords of Yuyuan Chuyu and Yuyuan Chuyun matched harmoniously as the sun set in Surging River. At that time, a sword sun was half sunk into the heart of the river, and numerous sword lights burst forth from the setting sun in the heart of the river, slaying countless people from the rebel army. Flying ships fell from the sky and corpses rained down. General Xiaoyi could only retreat. Only when Yuyuan Chuyu and Yuyuan Chuyun's armies crossed the river was the chaos in Lizhu quelled. They checked the Imperial scholars after that, and only then did they realize that they had suffered a great loss. There were even some directorates who had died in battle to save the scholars by fighting the devil. After that, numerous scholars had followed the directorates to quell the rebellion. Only when Imperial Preceptor returned to the court did the scholars' experience end and they returned to Imperial College. They were thus slightly later than Qin Mu. There were many Imperial scholars that had died, and Ji Yulinwan couldn't avoid the blame, so he requested his punishment from the Emperor. The Emperor forfeited his salary for half a year and demoted him to a 4th-ranking official. He was still in charge of Imperial College, but he wasn't spared from his duty. Ji Yulinwan ordered people to tidy up the casualty list, hoping to see Qin Mu's name there, but was a pity it didn't appear. After tidying up the casualty list, he immediately headed to the palace to meet the Emperor. On his way, he met a eunuch that announced imperial decrees heading towards Imperial College, and Ji Yulinwan immediately said, "Eunuch, are you going to Imperial College to announce an imperial decree?" That eunuch smiled. "Congratulations, Lord. The Imperial Academician gained merit in quelling this rebellion, which saved the scholars under you. His Majesty wants me to bring the Imperial decree to him and raise his official position." Ji Yulinwan's expression froze, and he said angrily, "This is what he should do, why is there a need for reward?" His Majesty said that some people can't even do what they should do properly, so he decided to use this as a warning to others. As a warning? Am I the one being warned? The corners of Ji Yulinwan's eyes twitched as he felt anxious in his heart. He took out a few great abundance coins and stuffed them into the eunuch's hand before bracing himself on his way to the palace. Just a few steps later, he met another imperial decree eunuch, who was also rushing to Imperial College. Congratulations, Lord Jiyu. Jiyu Linwan asked absent-mindedly, eunuch, what joy is there? Lord Jiyu might not know, but the Imperial Academician of your Imperial College gained merit in quelling the rebellion, so His Majesty sent me to bestow a reward, promoting him. Jiyu Linwan was shocked and cried out, another promotion. There was a eunuch just now who was going to promote him. Why is he getting promoted twice in a row? The Imperial Decree eunuch said, His Majesty said that the first one was because others didn't do what they were supposed to do and Imperial Academician had done what he was supposed to do, therefore he wanted to promote him to upper 6th ranking. Whereas this time, Imperial Academician had contributed to the quelling of the rebellion, and did a great merit, at the southern border, so is being promoted again to the lower 5th ranking. Jiyu Linwan took out a few great abundance coins and stuffed them into the eunuch's hand secretly before muttering, oh, so it was his contribution. Imperial Academician is the Academician of our Imperial College. For him to be rewarded for his contribution, I'm also honored. That's right. The Imperial Decree eunuch was all beaming smiles as he hurried away. Jiyu Linwan continued walking towards the palace with his thoughts wandering when he met another Imperial Decree eunuch. When the eunuch saw him, he was full of smiles. Congratulations, Lord Jiyu. Congratulations. Jiyu Linwan asked with a black face, eunuch, what joy is there? His Majesty made me bring the decree to promote Imperial Academician. The old eunuch then continued, Imperial Academician Qin Mu treated the injuries of Imperial Preceptor, therefore he is promoted to upper 5th ranking Palace Grandee, receiving the same treatment as the directorates. Getting promoted 3 times in a day, this is a great joy for your Imperial College. Jiyu Linwan nodded emotionlessly, and took out a few great abundance coins to stuff them into that old eunuch's hand without anyone knowing. He gave a forced smile and said, I'm honored as well. When the eunuch had walked away, Jiyu Linwan's face turned entirely black. With Qin Mu being promoted and he demoted, he would be on the same level as him in no time. Jiyu Linwan even had to spend quite a sum of money due to the other being promoted 3 times in a row. If he continues to get promoted, I'll be the one who has to call him Lord. Jiyu Linwan composed himself and went to see the Emperor to hand over the list of casualties. Emperor Yangfeng was currently reading his memorials, and upon Jiyu Linwan's entrance, he raised his head to take the list. After taking a look at it, he said with pain in his heart, these scholars were all my talents, the future pillars of the empire. Just because the news got leaked, they were harmed by the scums. I want to kill. Cold sweats broke out on Jiyu Linwan's forehead. He didn't dare say a word as he didn't know if the emperor would want to kill him as well if he interrupted. Emperor Yangfeng stood up and walked to and fro. He suddenly slammed the table and asked bitterly, I had only passed down the imperial decree about the location of the scholars' experience on the point of departure. So how did they get ambushed? Jiyu Linwan, Minister Jiyu. Tell me your opinion, who was the one that leaked the news? Jiyu Linwan muttered to himself irresolutely, looking at the situation of the battle in Lizhu. Lizhu Prefecture Magistrate had already invaded Deer County. When the directorates and scholars arrived at Lizhu, the rebels executed Soul Guide precisely. This means the rebels knew the exact time when the scholars would reach Lizhu, as if they had a premonition. They should have received the news of the scholars coming forward for an experience, which was why they still had the power to summon the devil and many souls even after invading Deer County. This means it wasn't the directorates or the scholars who had leaked the news and he braced himself to continue. And it was me or the other first-ranking high officials who had leaked the news. The traitor is right among us. Emperor Yangfeng sneered. Seems like there are some people among us who want me to shift give the throne to them. Other than you and me, those that had come forth that day for discussion and knew about this matter were all first-ranking high officials, the teachers of the Crown Prince, as well as Sichu, Sikong, and Duke. Who do you think is the traitor among them? Huge beads of sweat rolled down Jiyu Linwan's forehead, as he gritted his teeth and didn't say a word. Emperor Yangfeng gave him a glance and snorted coldly. You don't dare to say. Seems like you aren't loyal to me. Cold sweat poured down Jiyu Linwan's forehead. This minister has been frozen in great ruins for over 200 years. So I'm not familiar with the ministers of the imperial court, therefore I don't dare to speak. Just speak whatever is on your mind, I'll pardon you. I'm naturally slow-witted and very dumb. My junior protector's sword even got scammed away by the imperial academician, which shows how dumb I am. Emperor Yangfeng smiled with extreme anger and pointed at his nose. Stop beating around the bush. Imperial academician scammed your sword, but you could have lowered your head and apologized to him to ask for it back. If you are dumb, what need is there for you to be the Grand Chancellor? You can just pack your things up and scram. Tell me, who do you suspect? Ji Linwan gritted his teeth and raised his head. A few of Crown Prince's teachers are suspicious. What did you say? Emperor Yangfeng was unable to restrain his anger, and his emperor's might burst forth, pressuring Ji Linwan to lower his head. Suddenly, Emperor Yangfeng turned decrepit and waved his hand. Minister Ji, you're very smart, very smart. Fall back. Ji Linwan was covered in cold sweat as he slowly fell back. Come back, Emperor Yangfeng said. Ji Linwan's hair stood on end, and he braced himself for the walk back. Emperor Yangfeng said slowly, this time Imperial Preceptor did a huge contribution, and I have yet to reward him. What do you think I should reward him with? Ji Linwan lowered his head. What can the Emperor reward him with? Emperor Yangfeng shook his head. Nothing else. Ji Linwan thought for a while and said, then reward Imperial Preceptor with beautiful women and money. You have the same idea as me. Emperor Yangfeng sighed. I'm just afraid he will reject them like he always does. Ji Linwan hesitated before saying, many things happened this time. If Imperial Preceptor is really clever, he will definitely accept. Emperor Yangfeng was stunned, then he smiled. You're also a clever person. I'm not warning you and you have no need to be warned. Fall back. Also, don't keep messing with Imperial Academician. You can't mess with him, his power is beyond your imagination. Every time you give him trouble, I'm embarrassed for you. You're someone I placed in an important position despite everyone being against it. I don't want to keep cleaning up after your messes. Ji Linwan felt ashamed as he fell back and thought to himself, I can't mess with him. I can't mess with him. I, a big shot in the Devil Path, one of the few important figures of the Devil Path, can't mess with a brat of 5 elements realm. Have I lived the past few hundred years for naught? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor went back to reading his memorials, then suddenly placed his vermilion brush down, falling into a daze. I had sat down on this seat when I was middle-aged while some other sons had even died from the long wait. It looks like my Crown Prince doesn't want to be like me and wait on the seat of the Crown Prince for too long. In Imperial College, Qin Mu received 3 imperial decrees and his official position was raised to upper 5th ranking Palace Grandee. Palace Grandee was a welfare position and held no real power. People in it were civil officials of the empire in a way, but they were still wanderers. It was obvious that the emperor still had some doubts since Qin Mu was the master of heavenly devil cult. The emperor wouldn't give him real power, so that all levels of society wouldn't be filled with villains from the devil cult. Qin Mu threw the 3 imperial decrees into the west room, greatly startled. He was still cultivating the other 4 transformations in 5 elements realm. When heading to the south to quell the rebellion, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had given them many pointers. So when Chen Wanyan, Cai Yinxiang, and the rest returned from the southern border, they immediately headed to Floor of Heavenly Records to look for 5-element realms techniques. Cai Yinxiang even borrowed the Imperial Academician's book tablet from Qin Mu to enter the 3rd Floor of Heavenly Records to browse through the techniques. Qin Mu took in and sent out the star force of Saturn, and his body gradually transformed. His legs fused into one and turned into the tail of a snake. With a human head and snake body, he was almost 10 yards tall. At the same time, 2 tightly shut gates appeared behind him. During the journey to the south, he had already managed to cultivate the god transformation of Mercury Sovereign, Mars Sovereign, Jupiter Sovereign, and Venus Sovereign. It was only the form of Saturn Sovereign that he found hard to cultivate. No matter how dense his vital chi was, he couldn't form the most perfect form of Saturn's sovereign. When he executed Overlord Body 3 elixir technique this time, the tightly shut gate behind him gradually became clearer. Yet the words on it were still blurry, and he was unable to make them out. Saturn's sovereign was extremely special among the 5 elements star sovereigns. Saturn Earth Marquis technique was the head of the 5 elements and was unexpectedly hard to cultivate, especially the gate behind Saturn's sovereign. Qin Mu was able to transform into the form of Saturn's sovereign, but the gate behind him never fully materialized. The words on it were always blurry. From the sky, an earth-yellow light poured down continuously into his body. The star force of the earth element surged forth and stabilized the body of his god transformation. Gradually, Qin Mu discovered that the form of Saturn's sovereign still had more to its transformation. An apparition of a scroll appeared in his hands. When he looked at the apparition of the scroll, the writing on it was still blurry. However, from the peculiar lines there, the writing on the scroll should be tadpole script. It looked like sun, moon, insect, and fish, which was different from the writing of the modern day. Qin Mu had learned from Def, this great scholar, for close to 10 years. Def had extremely deep knowledge regarding ancient texts, but he had never taught Qin Mu about this kind of tadpole script. Qin Mu turned his head and looked at the writings on the apparition of the gate. Even though they were still blurry, he could see the similarity between the writing on the scroll and the gate. What kind of text is this? Qin Mu could faintly feel that something was weird. If every martial arts practitioner of 5 elements realm had such a gate behind their back and a scroll in the hands of their Saturn sovereign form, there would have definitely been someone who had studied the writings on the gate and scroll thoroughly and analyzed their profound meaning. So why hadn't Imperial Preceptor mentioned anything about it? Could it be that other people's Saturn sovereign form had no gate nor scroll? While Qin Mu was thinking, a deep devilish voice rang out in his mind. Stop letting your imagination run wild, these are Yudu's writings. How would a weakling like you recognize the writings of Yudu? Qin Mu's hair stood up on end, and he said in a panic, Who is talking in my body? Acting. The voice laughed. How long are you still going to act in front of me? When I borrowed your eyes to look at Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's battle, didn't you recognize me then, summoner of the ruler of Juqian? Now Qin Mu really felt a bone-chilling cold. When Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had a huge battle at Daxiang City, he stood at the mountain peak to observe the battle, but he was unable to see the moves of the strong practitioners. Juqian Devil King then borrowed his eyes to observe the battle, which allowed him to see the moves of Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, Teacher Paw, and the rest clearly. He could even comprehend the marvel of their terrifying moves. However, Qin Mu had thought he had concealed it pretty well, and didn't alert this Devil King. Yet now it showed up that his little thoughts had been completely useless. Juqian Devil King had long detected the turbulence in his heart, and guessed what he was thinking. Foolish Devil Summoner, it's completely useless to play those tricks that you think are clever in front of the great ruler of Juqian. Juqian Devil King's voice rang in his mind, leaving his ears buzzing from the vibration. It's best for a weakling like you to not play tricks in front of me. You can't imagine how strong I am. Serve me, worship me, that's your only way to survive. Qin Mu composed himself and suddenly smiled. Great leader of Juqian, I'm the only person left in this world that still understands Ghost Transferring God Dispatching Runes command. I'm also the only one who can still execute this spell. Juqian Devil King fell silent. After a moment, his voice rang out again, Interesting brat, you actually dared to haggle with me. Very well, very well. Qin Mu felt uneasy, uncertain if he would succeed in this haggle. If he didn't succeed and this devil fell out with him, he was most likely going to be in trouble. If he succeeded and kept himself alive, he could ask village chief and the rest to slowly kill Juqian Devil King when he returned to the village. From Juqian Devil King's actions, it was clearly still possible to kill him. After all, when Qin Mu and Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had gone on a journey together, Juqian Devil King hadn't made a move and hid quietly in Qin Mu's body. Only when Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was fighting with the cult master level existences like Teacher Paw did Juqian Devil King dared to borrow Qin Mu's eyes to observe the situation of the battle. He did that to find out Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's true power, and also to look for his weakness. However, Qin Mu was surrounded with experts of Heavenly Devil cult back then, so he didn't make a sound. After that, when Qin Mu was treating Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, Juqian Devil King had also been silent. Once Qin Mu parted ways with Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, he had met Cripple and Old Ma in Imperial College. So Juqian Devil King also didn't come out. Now that Old Ma and Cripple were no longer around and Qin Mu was alone, he had finally appeared. If Imperial Preceptor, Old Ma, and Cripple couldn't threaten him, there would have been no need for him to be so careful. In other words, he made a blunder. This meant that he could be vanquished, unlike Li Qianxing in granny-sized Dao Heart, which couldn't be killed at all. As long as one was strong enough, the devil could still be eliminated. Juqian is already finished, with only endless darkness left. That's why I need to find a new world for the people of my Juqian, a place where they can live and flourish. Juqian Devil King's voice traveled over. I took great pains to pass Ghost Transferring God Dispatching Runes command to this world, and now, you are the only one left who knows this spell. You should know I won't let you go so easily. Qin Mu was now completely at ease and let out a sigh of relief. So you want me to summon the devil again, to summon you over? Juqian Devil King explained patiently. I had this idea in the past, but I see that there are powerful beings in this world as well, so I would only like to borrow your hand to send some people here. I don't want to raise a war between the strong practitioners of both worlds. It isn't good for you, nor is it good for us. My Juqian is already finished, and I just don't want my race to be exterminated. I have no notion to take over this world. Believe? Fool. Qin Mu thought to himself. However, he couldn't say it out loud. If he said it, it would be easy for Juqian Devil King to kill him. With his consciousness leeching off Qin Mu's body, he has some magic power. This power of the devil was far superior to Qin Mu's own. If Juqian Devil King was to fall out with him, this consciousness and magic power would probably not find it a chore to get rid of him. The Devil King had a use for him, so he wouldn't lay his hands on him, but if he discovered that Qin Mu had no intention of summoning him, he would probably fall out with him. You don't need to summon me, just summon my subjects, Juqian Devil King said. After that, I will leave you and you can live your life carefreely. You just need to help me with this little thing, and I'll explain to you the words on the gate. Qin Mu smiled. My elder will most likely recognize the words on the gate, so there's no need to trouble the Devil King. Keek, recognize. Those are the words of Yudu. Even if he recognizes them, will you be able to read them? Juqian Devil King then added unhurriedly, there's no use if you can't read the words of Yudu. The scroll also records the spells of Yudu, don't you want to know them? Qin Mu's gaze wavered. What use is there to learn the words of Yudu, when I can't even read the words on the scroll, or the gate? Furthermore, it doesn't affect me much even if I don't learn them. Devil King, I have no need to make a deal with you. Ha ha ha. Juqian Devil King laughed. It seems like you still haven't comprehended the true marvel of the realm you're in. As long as you learn the words of Yudu, you will be stronger than Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. Didn't Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor say that others were a triangle while his a straight line? As long as you learn the words on the gate, your straight line will be even longer than his. His voice reverberated all around Qin Mu's mind, without any fixed position. It sometimes came from the left and sometimes from the right, while at other times it rang out from the front and sometimes from the back of the head, making Qin Mu unable to discern where it was coming from. A weakling like you probably doesn't know what Yudu is. Let me tell you. Yudu is the final destination, after you mortals die. All souls will enter there, the land where the great Earth Count resides, ruling over the world where all the living things go after they die. He's an incomparably ancient god, the primitive god who controls death. Even gods and Buddhas become enslaved by him once they die. Yudu is not the hell the gods and Buddhas had mentioned. Hell is used to scare you mortals, while Yudu is 100 times crueler than hell. By mastering Yudu's words and Yudu spells, you would strengthen your soul, and this is the stairs to becoming a god. Qin Mu was greatly moved and smiled. There's no proof with just words, and what you said is too good to be true. Tell me a spell from Yudu, and I'll believe you. Juqian Devil King chuckled. You should know. Chinmu was stunned for a moment and cried out, Soul Guide. Soul Guide is a spell from Yudu. Soul Guide isn't a complete spell from Yudu. Instead, it was a Yudu spell that was reconstructed by the mortals of your world using the language of mortals. It's far from the true power of a Yudu spell. Juqian Devil King said, the true Yudu spell uses the words of Yudu, and those words are much more complicated than the runes of your world. Your runes are merely simplified words of Yudu. Chinmu's heart trembled as he looked at the apparition of the scroll. The words on this scroll were written using Yudu's language. Soul Guide could allow the souls of the dead to return. But if one was proficient in Yudu's language and used it to execute the spell, how powerful would the spell become? There was still one more point. Juqian Devil King said that the words of Yudu must be read to be able to master and execute them. This sentence was not a lie. Back then on the surface of Surging River, the Daoist from Nine Spectres sect had used Soul Guide and sung a cryptic folk song. This made the black fog pour forward, and a terrifying gate of darkness had appeared in the heart of the river. Most of Juqian Devil King's words were lies, but there was still some truths in them. Devil King, I had once seen an elder beside the river at night guiding the dead. Someone told me that elder was a messenger of death. How is this messenger of death related to Yudu? Qinmu asked after recalling the incident. Juqian Devil King answered, just a messenger god under earth count to maintain the order. Do you want to learn the language of Yudu or not? Learn. Qinmu blinked his eyes innocently and said, teach me quickly. Juqian Devil King chuckled. After you summon the devils and bring forth my subjects, I'll teach you. Qinmu hesitated for a moment. If you don't keep your promise after I summon them, won't I be at a disadvantage? How about this? I shall create a wooden mechanism which you can enter. You can then summon your own devil and the others. You will be able to teach me Yudu's language, and summon the subjects yourself. Wouldn't that be to everyone's delight and satisfaction? Juqian Devil King sneered. It's a great suggestion. But after I leave your body, you will be able to call people to come and kill me the next moment. Do you think I'm that stupid? I'll remain in your body, and you shall hold the great sacrifice to summon the devils. After you summon them, I'll teach you the language of Yudu. Qin Mu sneered. What happens if you don't teach me after I summon your subjects? If your subjects kill me in a flash, you'll be free. On the other hand, I'll drop dead and my soul will belong to Yudu. Don't forget, when I summoned you last time, you didn't even care if I died or not. Both of them became silent. After a moment, Juqian Devil King smiled. Little brat, clever like the devil, not that easy to fool, eh? How about this? I shall sign an oath of alliance with you. You will summon my subjects, and I'll teach you the language of Yudu. Those who will go against the oath will have their souls taken away by the earth count. What do you think? Chinmu thought for a moment and said, all right. But don't try to fool me. I understand some devil language, so don't try to play any tricks on the oath. Juqian Devil King smiled. Filthy brat, clever as the devil. All right, I'll be generous for once and not play any tricks. Cryptic devil language rang out in Chinmu's mind. The words he heard were hard to pronounce and difficult to understand. Chinmu was only able to understand half of it, and his heart thumped wildly. Steady, steady. I can't let this Devil King know that I'm half-baked. Not much later, Juqian Devil King read out the Oath of Alliance, and the shape of half a gate gradually appeared in Chinmu's mind. It seemed to be half of the gate of Yudu. It's your turn, Juqian Devil King said. Chinmu composed himself and slowly worked on the meaning of the other half of the devil language that he hadn't understood at first. Yet Juqian Devil King grew impatient and urged him, quickly, or else the gate of Yudu is going to vanish. Chinmu sneered. You are trying to trick me. I'm not agreeing to this oath. Juqian Devil King smiled. Little brat, you really understand some of the devil language. Half of the gate of Yudu dispersed and the devil language sounded out again. This time Qin Mu managed to understand most of it, but there were still some terms he was not sure of and had to work to figure out. Ju Qian Devil King smiled. All right, I see you have the ability. After this, the gate dispersed again, and he redid the oath using the devil language. Qin Mu suddenly smiled. Devil King, you're always trying to trick me. Why don't we use the language of the humans to conclude the oath, what do you think? Ju Qian Devil King kept quiet for a moment, then scolded him for being as clever as the devil. Stinky brat, you only have a smattering of devil language and took this chance to learn something, didn't you? This video will end here.